finally, I think this thing of women have been screaming out for support for centuries. And it's only in the last few years that brands have started to realize, oh, women's wellness and health and recovery is worth investing in.
Hi everyone and welcome to No Place Like Home. I am your host today, Kath, and I also am joined by Larissa again.
Hello.
And the very wonderful Phoebe Simmons. We're very excited to have you alongside us today. So we're going to learn a bit more about you, Phoebe.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here in
I
this
know.
beautiful space.
I'm super excited you're here.
Together.
We're very lucky we're back at home at the moment. We've had some interim spaces, but
Yeah, that have been interesting.
This is the place.
this is the place.
Yeah.
This is where it's at today.
Tell us a bit about yourself, Phoebe, your kind of a bit of your background, your pregnancies, postpartum, and then a little bit about the memo.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh, where do I begin?
Where do you start?
Let's just throw all this at you and start wherever you like.
Right, I can spin a yarn. I'm 38 years old. I live just around the corner in Melbourne with my family. I have a stepson who's 8 years old and I have a 3-year-old son called Remy. And yeah, I think for me, I've been in business for a while now. Kate and I founded the Memo almost 6 years ago.
Wow.
After a walk around the town, where she, as a mum of 2, shared with me her idea to really kind of disrupt the baby game in Australia. Her background was in specialty retail. She was at Mecca, and before that she was at Myer and David Jones, and she bought brands and planning an assortment, and she walked into big box retail when she found out she was pregnant and walked straight out again. She was overwhelmed by the clutter and underwhelmed by the experience, and she thought that there was an opportunity to bring something better to Australian parents that was really centered on their experience and their needs rather than just selling stuff. And she shared with me the idea, and my background's in brand and marketing. So I'd been in beauty my whole life. I'd worked all over the world, working for LVMH, Benefit Cosmetics, spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia and in the UK and in the US. And I'd been in Sydney. And so I really understood brand. And I was single at the time when Kate shared with me the idea.
That was going to be my next question. Were you in a relationship? Like, where were you at in your life?
Nowhere near postpartum.
Or pregnancy. Absolutely not. And, remember, this is 6 years ago. We didn't have podcasts like this.
Yeah.
We didn't have beautiful spaces like this. And actually the conversations were only just starting to be had on social. They were still kind of behind closed doors. And so the baby industry was actually, when I looked at it as someone who had not had to look at it before, which, by the way, is how every single new parent looks at it for the first time. And I was really surprised, considering my background in how other industries work, like beauty and fashion and lifestyle. I was really surprised at how unsophisticated and overly commercial and overly cluttered the baby industry was. And so, I thought, oh my gosh, we can absolutely do something with this. And I think what to me was missing, apart from the elements that Kate had already identified, was how much parents were screaming for support. The thing that we see a lot is just this need for connection and conversations and understanding and empathy, which, yes, can come through on socials, but it can also come through customer service and in store. And we wanted to really layer that into what the Memo experience was all about.
So obviously then this was 3 years-ish before you then had your
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. How did that What was that experience like for you? Did you fall pregnant easily? How was that experience?
I would say relatively easily falling pregnant. We were one of those COVID romances, which was great because, remember your bubbles?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went from the start of COVID being like, I'm 33, I'm single. Oh my God, I'm going to lose a year of my life. And it, could have been 2 of like fertility, you know, being fertile and all the rest of it.
And likely very aware of it, particularly working in this field now. Like,
yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to meet anyone over this time. And then I was set up on a blind date in April. You know, when COVID started in March. And then we were just on.
Wow.
Yeah. But Sean, the other layer for our relationship is that Sean was a solo dad for Tyler. So Tyler's mum passed away when he was a baby. And so I met Tyler when he was 3.5 years old. But Sean had been solo parenting for 3 years. And so I kind of came into the relationship, I guess, with the assumed, you know, being a step parent. And then we were quite keen to extend the family. And so then, that would have been, I guess at the end of the next year that, I got pregnant. I got pregnant, not we. I got pregnant.
100%.
Yeah.
There's no
We're having a baby. No, I'm having a baby.
Who did that recently on a podcast? They were talking about it.
Loz and Lou.
That's it.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was Loz and Lou. That's
good
right.
Yeah.
I remember that. Just to go back a little bit, where did the name The Memo come from?
It was born just like the memo from a list. So it's all about like, I'll send you the list. I'll give you the inside scoop. I've got that information for you. So Kate had this list that, I'm sure most people listening, you know, they had the list that was passed from trusted friend to trusted friend. And you know what that list is like? It's like, get 6 of these. Don't bother about this. Borrow this from me. Only buy this once you've actually had the baby. And Kate trusted that list because it was the only thing she felt that she could trust. She felt like she was being sold to everywhere else. And so we took that list and we used those exact products really to create the memo. It started very, very small and tight and concise. And then we wanted to bring that energy of that tone of a trusted friend and that no assumed knowledge, you know, not thinking that parents actually understand what you're talking about when you say a slow float nipple teat. Like, why would I need to know?
Particularly pre-babies, like that may as well be Spanish.
Well, exactly. And it's written like it's in Spanish. And it's like, let's just be clear about this. Let's just help customers navigate this really confusing category in real terms like a friend would help you.
Equally in that, like, you know, you're going into this, we've spoken about this before in postpartum, like what that looks like. Your brain functions in a completely different way. So you walk into overwhelm during pregnancy and you're like, whoa, I need all the things. I must need all the things. They're right here in front of me.
This is everything that I need.
Knowing what the goal is, that's where it's at.
Exactly. That's why we want our community to trust us. It's like, we've only got the best. You know, you don't need 87 types of car seats. You know, that's why we just stock a few just to help cut out all of that extra cognitive load.
How did having the memo inform you for beginning your journey?
I mean, you think that you would be prepared. And I feel like I got a much greater insight into the world of parenting because, you know, we were creating content. Our head of content was writing these amazing articles. We were having these conversations. We were driving these conversations. We were meeting with brands. We were meeting with customers. And so I do feel like I had a good understanding of what was to come. You never know. Like, I felt like, you know, there's that stat about 62% of women feel like they weren't prepared for the realities of postpartum. I kind of felt like I had a good sense of that, but I wasn't ready for – I had a really big curveball in my pregnancy and I felt really out of my depth with that because it was so medical. You know, it was less connection. I had cervical – well, they said incompetence, but now they've changed it to insufficiency, which I think is much kinder. It's cervical.
What is that for people that are listening?
It's when your cervix shrinks to such a small millimeter that essentially your body's going into labor. And so I was told that you want it to be around 25 millimeters or so throughout your pregnancy. And mine went from 40 early on to 13 mils at my 20-week scan. And that was when they put me on immediate bed rest and were basically like, you could go into labor at any second, which obviously it was very scary. They were like, they wouldn't let me go to the toilet. Like they put me on my back in a hospital bed. They wheeled me to a room. They wouldn't let me walk. They made me pee in a bedpan. It was pretty full on.
Baby.
And then the week later it had shrunk to 4 millimeters, and they were like, okay, so they added this stitch that kind of held Remy in for 20 weeks. But then I was also on bed rest for about 3 months as well, just to make sure. So I didn't feel like, you see this thing about this perfect pregnancy, and my sister, who had 4 kids by that stage, was like, you're saying like there's this thing like this perfect pregnancy, but there's no such thing. Who cares? The whole point is to have a baby. So why do you need something to be one certain way, which I thought was really interesting framing. That helped me.
Yeah, like being robbed of the journey you thought, though, is a different thing altogether. Like whether pregnancy looks the same for you as it did for your sister is somewhat irrelevant. It's like, but I thought I had time to do the things, whatever the things are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's early on in the pregnancy for such a monumental shift. Like that's just not a little thing. That's sort of like, okay, I can't move for a certain period of time, and then this is what this means. And like, I'd never heard of that.
And that's and that happens, I think, to so many women. Like it could be either, you thought that you would give birth vaginally and you give birth via C-section, or you thought that you would breastfeed, and, like everyone has their expectations or understanding. And you're right that it can be really disappointing, but I think the reframing can really help.
Yeah.
So you get to 20 weeks, you get thrown a curveball, and then you're on bed rest. So what did that leading into your birth look like?
Well, I was freaking out, and my OB was much more, she was calmer and more confident. And so it was very much around milestones. It's like, it would be great to get to 22 weeks. It would be great to get to 24 weeks. It would be great to get to 26 weeks. I think we felt really good once we got to 32 weeks. And then I felt like I could relax a little bit more. She was really keen to get us to 28. And then she thought that, you tackle. Yeah. So it was very much week by week, milestone by milestone. And then we took the stitch out at 37 or 38 weeks, and then thinking that might mean that I could go into labor like instantly. And then I didn't. And so I had another week or so up my sleeve, and then we actually induced.
Oh, wow.
But then,
That's whack.
I know. And then they said, that was like, that's what I mean. It's like, see, you never know. So that was at 39 weeks. And then that was like the Thursday night. But then I woke up with contractions on the Friday morning, and then they said it wasn't. So then they called my birth not inducted. And I was like, but you did induce me. But they don't think that it forced that. It was like natural labor. Anyway, whatever. Anyway, and there we go. And then on to labor.
That's quite a mental game.
Yeah.
Yes.
For a long period of time.
Yes.
Like going from thinking I'm going to birth this baby at potentially 20 weeks to then getting to 39 weeks, almost full term.
Yeah.
That's quite a mental game. How did you navigate that?
I found it really hard.
Yeah.
It was really scary. And it was that thing of like being brave and confident and positive, but also being really vulnerable. And, like it doesn't help when it's like called cervical incompetence, like, I'm incompetent, like my body's letting me down when you're used to it being so strong and things. But it was week by week, and I felt really supported. Like I felt, it made me really appreciate the experience, I think, in being a woman and being in such a real moments, real and raw moments. And I was just really looking forward to giving birth. I was like, bring it on.
Yeah.
So then when we were ready for that, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And then now I look at Remy now, I'm like, how are you going to come at 20 weeks? Like, it's crazy. Yeah.
And how was your birth?
It was the best. I loved it.
Good.
I really loved it. Like, you know, it was effed up.
Yeah.
But I loved but I loved it because it was just so real.
Yeah.
Do you want me
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what happened? So went into labor naturally.
Yeah.
And then we went into the hospital, and then at about let's call it 6 a.m. at about 9 a.m. I was like, okay, I'm ready. I had like the TENS machine and stuff, and that was really helping. And then I was like, okay, like remember my friend saying to me, if you think that you want an epidural, do not wait for it. Like get it. Don't just think, like I'll get it later. It's like if you think you're going to have it. So they came in and did that. And then I was shocked. Like, have you guys had an epidural?
Yeah.
So
the warm blanket.
And then I was like, oh my God, like I
had
can't
to sleep.
feel anything. I was like, I could have a cigarette and a coffee, you know, and we were just like chatting about, you know, with the midwife about like
I had
holidays and
labor.
And exactly. I'm like, is this happening?
Yeah.
Like something was happening.
Wild.
I feel like we have definitely spoken about this before, but I remember this transformation, this like for myself being primal and then it was obviously hard work, and then you get this epidural, and I could remember my husband saying, we want one of these next time, straight away. Like you just turn into a different person, right? Or yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we did that, and then and then I guess it was I still can't believe how ignorant I was. So I'd done with my friend a hypnobirthing course, and we still laugh about it. So I was really like, it was so fun. I was so into it. I was so like, you know, I loved that approach, but I was still always going to have an epidural. I don't think I like joined the dots between the two. And so then they're like, I saw your face, Larissa. And then
I knew
like,
where this was going. Yeah.
And then I'm like, cool, I'm ready to like birth on all fours or whatever, or like move around. And they're like, are you high? I'm like, yeah, obviously I'm high. But they were like, you can't move.
There goes the hypnobirthing.
I mean, like great first and breathing and stuff, being present. But then so I was like, oh, cool. Okay, so I'm birthing on my back then. And then I had to learn like really quickly like how to bear down.
And it's so, I don't know about anyone else, but I was like, you need to teach this better, because you're not even talking about how hard pushing is.
No.
Particularly when you've had an epidural.
No, it's like, you know how they tell you to, you know, like when you were kids and you had to tap your head and rub your belly? It's like doing things that feel kind of the opposite.
Yeah.
Like bear down. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I kept
getting the words that you need.
Yeah.
I kept getting given the coffee plunger analogy. It's like, pretend you're a coffee plunger and you're just like
that's
pushing down on the coffee plunger, but then they were like, no, that's too much. Stop. And you're going to tear. I'm like, okay, do I breathe in? Do I suck it back up? What do I do? Like, how do you stop that?
So confusing. And then I was getting really angry at myself because I'm like, I'm better than this. I can do this. Yeah. Just engage your brain, idiot. Like, this is it. Like, this is it. This is the moment you've been waiting for. Like, come on. Anyway, we got there. And then they use the little hat thing, the suction cup, what's that called? Ventouse.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that one too.
Yeah. And they had to get him out because he wasn't getting out fast enough. And then, 5 days in hospital afterwards, which was great.
Oh.
Yeah, I'd booked that.
Good.
That was good. And then home, and, you know, my husband went straight back to work. Great. And then, we had a 5-year-old at home and a brand new baby.
How was your postpartum?
It was way too fast.
Yeah.
I was anxious. Yeah. I was always somewhere else, even when I was at home with the baby.
Yeah, okay.
I would not do it the way that I did. It was 3 months, but no.
It wasn't 3 months. Because you were still dipping into work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the same when I had my own business. I mean, with Seb, second time round, I was back at work for 2 full days when he was 6 weeks.
That's all. Yeah. Yeah.
So what did that talk about the ins and outs of that for you? Like, obviously you're still managing a business that is growing as well at this period of time quite rapidly. And so you're managing a 5-year-old, hubby's back at work, and then you've got this brand new baby.
Yeah. And luckily, we have the most amazing team, and Kate, my business partner, did just a phenomenal amount of work and capacity and held everything together so beautifully, and everyone was so great and supportive. But it's just my mind, I'm thinking about and then you're thinking about things like content and just staying in touch. I also had a hairdressing business at the time as well, which was a whole other thing. So it was just a lot of you're still thinking about other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I knew all the things. I knew I would fitness and stuff. I didn't rush back to that. I knew to take all of that kind of slow. But I think it was just the mental. The one thing that I think was different from my experience versus maybe a lot of people's was that it was my first time having a baby, but it was Sean's second. And so he knew how to do everything. And so his way.
Yeah.
And so I could really follow his lead on things like, oh, should I be worried about this? Or, getting the baby to sleep, or just all those little.
So he was a good support in that.
Yes.
In that kind of way.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Wow. It's an interesting time to navigate generally motherhood. But if you add layers on top of it, like running your own businesses, it is. I think we're stripped of that time, number one, as mothers, but then when you are trying to navigate running your own business as well, it kind of takes you out of all of those present moments.
Yeah.
And you're physically there with your child, but you're not actually there because you're kind of, as you said, you're thinking about content, or you're thinking about a HR issue, or you're thinking about something else. So, yeah, it's an interesting time to navigate. And I think that is getting harder as women are having children older.
Yes.
Because we become very ingrained in our careers.
Yeah.
And then that is a real driving force for that sense of identity, which, we know that motherhood is one of the biggest shifts in our identity.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it becomes more and more complex for women as they birth later.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
The age thing is really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong or right with it. I just think it's a fundamental of what the direction that sort of women are going in, where we do have more responsibility in the workforce, and we, are having all of these sorts of layers that we're adding because we want them. But then motherhood just adds. It adds more.
And that's why it can be such a rug pulled out from underneath you.
Yeah.
If your identity, which you think is so established, then does feel different because it's a big change rather than
huge.
A little one. Yeah.
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 So obviously the memo, we're looking at you guys as part of the Brains Trust, really, around, a receiver of information or giving of information to these families.
Yeah.
When's too, what are you telling them? What does that look like?
When's too much information?
Yeah. Well, we don't tell them anything. We just share. We just want to share different perspectives and different ways to parent. But our mantra is that we're there to help parents feel good, prepared, and supported. So what does that look like? The biggest things that we hear feedback on in terms of when things really connect, I would say the biggest topics are around breastfeeding, identity, and postpartum, all of which it could be the same thing or not. Breastfeeding, we do a huge amount of work in August every year around, I know it's still called World Breastfeeding Week, but we've always called it World Breastfeeding Week for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And the amount of feedback that we get over that time, people are people are feeling that. People are finally feeling heard, that we understand and we're advocating for them that there's more than one way to feed their baby, because I don't necessarily think 5 years, and all still probably in some circles and in society, that is the message that's getting out. So we really advocate for that. I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done on gatekeeping around formula and things like that, but that's a topic for another day. I think there's a lot of work that we try and do around celebrating postpartum in all its forms. But by celebration, I don't mean go out there and live it. It means that celebrate what you've been able to achieve, acknowledge that, acknowledge your body over that time. We talk about like that pregnancy, is a huge physical, obviously is such a physical experience, and then postpartum is just as much so. I mean, there's a big gaping
Postpartum is forever.
Postpartum is forever. And so, if pregnancy was the marathon, then postpartum is your recovery. And I think we've really championed this area. I mean, before the memo was started, there was no retailer really doing mum in any significant way. It was very fragmented. And so we wanted to bring those best brands in and those big conversations in, so more experiences were being heard. And I think there's still a lot of work that we and society need to do around helping more people understand and feel really good about things like cesareans. I mean, cesareans, even I still see now that topic is, is so loaded for some people on socials, and I really don't want that to be the case. None of us want that to be the case. And so I think there's a lot of advocacy we can do there. And then this around identity and anxiety. I mean, we're hearing all of it and we're wanting to address it and support it and essentially just help people feel like they're not alone, that they're part of this one big experience.
We've obviously talked before this podcast, Phoebe, but there are, even though we're two completely different businesses, there's actually a lot of similarities. Yeah. So obviously in this space, we get a lot around identity, breastfeeding, all of those sorts of things. So it's interesting because you kind of think that we as a society around this topic of pregnancy, birth, not really postpartum, but I think we think that we've come a long way, but there's just so many. There's instances where we have, but there's much more where we just haven't. We think we've progressed, but we just haven't in lots of conversations. And I think, you guys are obviously seeing it on the floor in the work that you do. We're seeing it in the work we do. Conversations that I know I certainly have with still midwives and people who are in the hospital system, and we're not getting any better for these women and birthing people that are trying to break these cycles. It doesn't seem to be getting any easier. Is that something that you are certainly seeing? Are you still seeing the mentality walk into your stores that is like, I just need to have all the things, but I'm not sure why I need the things?
In my experience, no. I think people come to us already with a bit of understanding about who we are. I think we attract a certain type of member in our community who's done a little bit of research and is understanding the importance of putting themselves first, essentially. But that, I mean, we're still really small and there's major,
as opposed to your competitors, are you saying?
Yeah. Okay. And I think our customer base and so, we're still small, but we're definitely dominant in terms of conversation starters, I think. But I think what we see is probably a bit siloed versus what's happening out there in healthcare circles and government.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's time that, well, I know that you guys are doing so much advocacy work on bringing in government bodies and healthcare providers into these conversations so they really understand. And also, if you apply a financial business sense to it, it's only going to make sense for these businesses because it's supporting women, which means it's supporting families, which means it's supporting society. But that's really big work, and it, it starts with the one-on-ones,
changing
and then
a full narrative, right? Which obviously you have to take many different approaches to do, don't you? And you've got to target different audiences. Like you said, I guess you guys have like an audience that has already researched what you are for, and they're captive of that. Like, bring it on. When they're walking through the journey of being with you guys at the Memo, assumably they're walking in a lot of times during pregnancy and then likely again in postpartum.
Yeah.
Are people saying to you, which I know that we experience as well, why didn't you tell me past postpartum looked like this? Like, why didn't I know this? Like, is that...
It's not why didn't you tell me? It's I wish I knew. Or I'm finding it really hard. Or this is a very isolating time. Or thank you for letting me. I'm not alone. I didn't realize. It's big conversations in a retail environment. And we're so glad that we can be there. And our team are really trained. They're experts, and and we want our customers to be able to connect in this way that they can feel really vulnerable. And 9 times out of 10, we've all had those same experiences too. And so we can really talk to our customers. And this is kind of what I think is so special about the Memo. So many of us who have worked there have given birth this century. So we know what it's like, unlike some people in other baby retailers. Or sitting on the boards.
Unnamed.
Unnamed.
Yeah, we get it.
What are the most commonly asked questions that sit in those spaces for you? Like,
I think practically when you think about breastfeeding, it's is it going to hurt? What's a reasonable amount of pain to feel? How is pumping supposed to feel? How often do I need to pump? Does pumping generate milk production? Like, what should I be using it for? Why do I need to measure my nipple? Like, it's everything, because you've never had to ask those questions before. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot on, cesarean recovery and what's required. And then we get a lot of, obviously, outside of postpartum and, breastfeeding and stuff, it's a lot of practical things as well. I mean, I love the one about, like, is a birth comb really going to work? I'm like, each to your own, right? Some people swear by them, and, all of those kind of things.
Whoa.
This could be a whole other episode.
What is a birth comb?
Oh, Larissa.
I'm 12 years on, right? There were no birth combs.
Okay, so
I don't think so anyway.
For what it's worth, birth combs have been around for centuries, and some people swear by them in that they're a way to kind of navigate and rewire pain signals. And so while you're having contractions, you squeeze down on this comb where the teeth bits like create
pierce
pain,
another part of your body.
And so you're able to distract yourself, like having a TENS machine, but this is a very natural,
your pain receptors.
Yes, and some people swear by them, and I'm like, I can't tell you if it's going to work or not, because I don't know what experience you're going to have. And this is this thing about, like, personalization. It's like, oh my God, if you think you want to pack a birth comb, and we will give you that birth comb. But the next person who walks in may be like, absolutely not, that's not going to work for me. Give me the drugs or whatever. Yeah. It's good to be prepared though, all the tools.
I feel like I just need to come into the Memo one day and look at all the tools.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You would be surprised. You would be surprised at how far it's come.
Oh my goodness.
Even from when Kate gave birth and when I, 3 years ago. And finally, I think this is this thing of women have been screaming out for support for centuries. And it's only in the last few years that brands have started to realize, women's wellness and health and recovery is worth investing in. Like this thing about these portable pumps. Like, why did portable wearable pumps not exist 10 years ago?
No, you've got to be sitting right next to the PowerPoint, and you've got to have your stash next to the Wow.
Because it needs to be painful and women don't need their independence and freedom.
Yeah.
You know, like when you start to put women first, it can make a huge difference. And also, by the way, we have wallets that we're really willing to spend if you invest in us.
Yeah.
So we're so pleased to see that come through.
Yeah.
Or you can just rely on a birth comb, you know, a simple old school method.
Wow.
We like to ask this question at the end of every episode. What do you think of the current state of postpartum care and what do you think needs to change?
A lot of what we're already talking about, I think society needs to do, we need to do a lot more on educating society about putting women first. The topic that I've found particularly compelling is this area around postnatal depletion. I think greater awareness about that and, you know, what that phrase kind of coined by Dr. Oscar Serralak. Depletion can last for 7 years and it is different to postnatal depression, postnatal anxiety. I can include a blog post maybe in the show notes for you with him. I think a lot of women probably experience it without fully realizing, and it can create a lot of brain fog. It can really limit a woman's potential in terms of feeling good for their months or years after giving birth. And I think that can really impact her identity. I would love more women to know that there is a condition for that and there are solutions for that, rather than just thinking you have to kind of wade through mud or through fog through
or
it.
it's misdiagnosed.
Yes.
You know, it just gets put into a box that has been there for a very long time that might be PNDA.
Or you're just tired.
Or you're just tired. This is
really
just being a mum.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
This is just being a mum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then stop complaining because that's all part of it. Like, no, this is not about complaining.
Yeah.
This is about, I think that's a good point.
Yeah. I think it's good now that, you know, there is actual research surfacing that talks about the actual changes that are happening in a woman's brain through that period from birth and then into that postpartum, because you can see it as clear as day on these scans.
Yeah.
So it's good that that's starting to get a lot more noise around it. And I know that Dr. Oscar is doing a lot of work around that too, to try and medicalize postpartum so that it's actually taken a bit more seriously. I'm sure that's not the exact term that Dr. Oscar would use, but you know what I mean.
That's right.
So hopefully over the next sort of 5 to 10 years, it starts to actually be recognised a lot more, particularly by Medicare and private health insurance, because when you talk to private health insurance at the moment, which we have done quite a bit of, they're satisfied with their postpartum offering. There is no
Well, have they had to experience it?
$34.16 is not a postpartum offering.
Yes, how satisfying.
Yeah, which is wild.
Yes.
So
women need to be in those meetings. Women who have given birth need to be in those meetings. Yeah.
Thanks for being here with us, Phoebe.
Thank you for
We've
having
really
me.
enjoyed this chat. We will link a lot of the information that we've talked about today in the show notes below. And get on down to the Memo. It's not just a whole lot of goods. It's, as you've said, Phoebe, there's a lot of really great conversations. You host a lot of amazing information events. Look out for all of those on their Instagram page. But we'll link everything underneath anyway.
Thanks, Larissa. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for what you guys do.
This podcast represents the opinions of our hosts and their guest speakers. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and content here should not be taken as medical or professional advice. Please consult your healthcare professional for any personal recommendations and medical care. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate based on the best available information at the time of recording, we welcome any comments, suggestions or feedback via our website contact form, home.com.au/contact. Names and details of personal experiences may have been changed to allow for anonymity and privacy. To join the conversation, join us on social media at Home Postpartum.